Tonight on our news, all eyes on Hurricane Ian as the Category 4 storm batters Florida. Hear from some U.S. residents who are visiting the Bahamas as they say they are concerned about the Sunshine State. Plus, a look at how Grand Bahamians and Biminites are preparing for Hurricane Ian's heavy rain and gale force winds. Also, flights canceled. Ferocious weather in Florida leaves some passengers stranded. And later, friends of Marcus Hinsby remember his life after his brutal murder in a western New Providence condo this week. Welcome to our news and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. We are now tracking Hurricane Ian, which has made landfall in Florida as a ferocious Category 4 storm. Residents in Grand Bahama and Bimini are on high alert tonight as a tropical storm warning remains in effect. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, meteorologist Greg Thompson joins us now from the Weather Center, where he is tracking the tropics. What are we seeing, Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. Of course, you mentioned Ian Category 4 storm, just 2 mile per hour short of a Cat 5, causing catastrophic flooding and some storm surge across Florida. It's now inland, as you mentioned, and the eye is basically closing, so it's weakening as it crosses, but it's still packing 140 mile per hour winds. We'll continue to track across Florida. Rain bands associated with that still affecting portions of the Bahamas. You notice one just moving across Andros as we speak, and there are a couple other rain bands just behind that. So we are going to continue to see these rain bands affect us. And once again, tropical storm warnings remain in effect for Bimini and Grand Bahama. But it's likely that that will be dropped by tomorrow, as most of this activity will continue to pull towards the north and away from us. So we're looking at another 12 to maybe 24 hours of some more rain bands, but things should be clearing up. Back to you, Tyler.
Thanks, Greg. And Grand Bahama still feeling those tropical storm conditions today. Our team caught up with residents who were taking no chances. Megan Shepard fills us in.
Overcast skies and rough seas was the backdrop on Grand Bahama Wednesday afternoon. Betty Williams telling our news team she prepared with prayer and the traditional necessities.
You know, I have canned goods home and everything like that, but I'm not just getting a whole heap of things. You know, I'm just holding faith.
Gabby Grant says she's lived near the coast for decades and she's not overly concerned. However, their family business sits directly on the water.
I do have some worries, but the last 10 years or so, I guess, the water hasn't really done anything much to the side of the island. I mean, I know there's always a possibility, but I'm not that worried.
Alan Williams says he's weathered countless storms and believes he has a sixth sense about whether or not a storm will hit. When it comes to Hurricane Ian, Williams wasn't too fazed.
I got a good feeling with this one, that's why I'm sitting here.
Sitting on your porch reading a book?
Yeah, reading the book and just enjoying the good breeze, because man, it was, the past couple of days was pretty hot and humid.
Over in Western Grand Bahama, our news team caught up with Chief Welfare Officer in the Department of Social Services, Rochelle Minnis.
We have 3 shelters that are activated and open, and so we are asking residents, if you don't feel safe in your homes, or if you fear your home may be flooded, or you have to evacuate from your home, we're asking you to do so.
Now, if you intend to seek shelter, you are reminded to bring along personal items, such as a blanket, medication, important documents, and water. Reporting for our news, I'm Megan Shepard.
Thanks, Megan. Now, Bimini was also placed under a tropical storm warning, and officials were quick to react. Vice Chairman of the Disaster Preparedness Committee, Guion Roach, says residents are taking this threat seriously.
Everyone is pretty much prepared for some flooding if possible, because there are parts of the island that water settles. And I think, like I said, we've taken it seriously. People have made their preparations. I'm really impressed at the response here in Bimini. Sometimes we tend to be a bit dismissive of storms and oh, that ain't coming, that'll turn. But I think the response has been really, really well. There's an atmosphere of preparedness. And I was getting calls 6 o'clock this morning.
Bimini's command center is operating out of the administrator's office in the George Weish complex, where response teams are in place in the event of any emergencies.
The plan at this point is we are really taking our directives from NEMA. Like I said, we've activated our preparedness plan. We've already activated one hurricane shelter. Right now, that is at Gateway Community Church. We're using their gymnasium. Defense Force officers have already been placed there. and that is already open and ready to go, and that is 24 hours.
Hurricane Ian bringing heavy winds and rain to Florida today. The wild weather causing flight cancellations and delays at Linden Pinland International Airport on Wednesday morning.
The airport has experienced a number of flight cancellations from the South and Central Florida area today and also yesterday. Persons traveling are encouraged to contact their airlines directly for flight updates.
That's the Vice President of Marketing and Commercial Development for Nassau Development Company Limited, Jan Knowles, confirming that several flights were canceled. Most were destined for South Florida. When the R-News team visited LPIA, the Flight Information Display System showed that American Airlines, JetBlue, Bahamas Air, and Delta all had canceled or delayed flights. An airline agent telling me that most passengers would have received cancellation messages and emails on their cell phones before their departure time, and as a result did not show up at the airport. I caught up with Bill Jackson from Nebraska, who says his journey to the Bahamas was smooth, but he is concerned about Florida.
I have a lot of good friends and business associates in Florida, and I just hope everybody takes precautions and remains safe.
This traveler was heading to New York, but he says he has a winter home in Florida.
Hopefully everything will be good. It's supposed to be a direct hit on Naples, where we are a little above us in Fort Myers, so hopefully it all goes good. We've got hurricane glass and shutters, and hopefully our neighbor who's watching it is taking care of it for us.
Bahamian students studying in Central Florida not taking any chances, as many have evacuated areas in the direct path of Hurricane Ian. But as the Miami Consul General tells us in this report, they are calling on every single student to register with the consulate in order to have a better idea of who's weathering the storm in the Sunshine State. Jamila Mizik reports.
With Hurricane Ian expected to lash out in Central Florida, Consul General at the Consulate of Miami, Kurt Hollingsworth, says many of the students in that area have been relocated inland.
As far as the information that we have received, a number of students have returned to the Bahamas via Bahamas Air. And I imagine the challenge that we will have would basically be the aftermath. And so we have teams already assembled to ensure that we reach out to these persons.
He says ensuring the safety of the students is a priority. However, a challenge for them has been the fact that many have not registered with the consulate.
We don't know where students are unless parents register them with the consulate in Miami. And so we've been trying to encourage parents, firstly, to have their students registered with us at the consulate so that we can be able to instantly reach out to them.
And while they had issues locating some students, he says there were a number of persons who reached out to them for help.
Whenever we're faced with this kind of situation with hurricanes and other natural happenings, to take the necessary precautionary measures and get out of town like everybody's been trying to.
The Consul General says they will remain on standby and can be contacted on their 24-hour emergency line at 786-795-5826. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
Thanks for that report, Jamila. Now, Bahamians in the west coast of the Sunshine State have done their best to hunker down as they brace for the impact of Hurricane Ian, which made landfall as a Category 4 this afternoon. Our Marlena Leonard spoke to 3 Bahamians in the direct path of the major storm.
Lori Dames is in the Land O'Lakes area and has been living in Florida for a couple of years. Hurricane Ian is the first storm she's experiencing as a Florida resident. Living 20 miles from the coast, her neighborhood wasn't under a mandatory evacuation. So her focus was on making sure her family, who lives closer to the storm's path, was safe.
I have nieces that go to university in Tampa or the Tampa Bay area. So one of actually my top priorities was getting them from school. A lot of the schools had mandatory evacuations. So I had to kind of round them up. So now I have 4 of them with me.
Hurricane Ian was a major storm when it swept ashore, bringing heavy rain and flooding along with powerful winds. The weather was so severe it even caught this Weather Channel reporter off guard. Fort Myers, Florida was one of the first areas to feel the brunt of the storm. Leah Head-Rigby has battened down in the Lehigh Acres community in Fort Myers and says the Bahamians she knows are prepared.
They're all hunkered down with real shutters on their buildings and stuff like that, because we know what we're doing. We just have to now wait for it to go through and wait for Florida Power and Light and Duke Energy to get us all back on.
Mark Winder is originally from Nassau and lives with his family in Wesley Chapel in Evacuation Zone C. He says the almost annual near misses of a direct hit from a hurricane caused many to not take the risk seriously initially.
Every year you get these threats of storms, and it almost never hits. And so, the mindset here is, we'll be okay.
He says he knows many who live closer to the beach who evacuated.
I've got one friend that left our area to go to Naples, and he and his family are in a really tough spot now. The brunt of the storm is really beating on them now, and so we're a little anxious because he's telling us that they're all tucked away in the bathroom because it's really rough. So I'm waiting to hear back from them just to make sure everyone is okay.
Reporting for our news, I'm Marlena Leonard.
While players for the Miami Heat are in town for training camp this week, they say their minds and hearts are with the people in Florida who are being impacted by Hurricane Ian. Coach Eric Spoelstra spoke to our news about continuing to work despite the storm.
We're able to be here in a safe environment, doing what we love to do, but really our hearts and our thoughts are going out to everybody in South Florida, Central Florida, Tampa area, who are bracing right now, and we're very familiar with the hurricane season. For the last week, we've been keeping an eye on it. We didn't know whether we'd be able to be down here. We feel very grateful for that, but there's going to be a lot of other people that are going to feel it, and we're thinking about them.
Miami Heat players Tyler Hero and Udonis Haslam sharing similar sentiments.
It's devastating, what's going on. It's we all have families back there, and it's not easy for anybody. My family's back at home, and I know they're scared. So, it's just part of life, and hopefully, everyone stays safe and we can get through it.
We're fathers, we're husbands, we're sons, we're everything else before we're basketball players. So, that's not easy. Leaving our families during this time, but we're just gonna come out here and get to work and keep praying up for everybody.
Now the team will remain in the Bahamas until Saturday evening. Still to come on our news, a 65-year-old male charged with sexual assault. Find out the details of the Andrews resident arraignment. Remembering Marcus Hinsby, friends of the longtime Cable Bahamas employee honor his life following his brutal killing this week, as investigators are actively probing his murder. And later, the Prime Minister touting his government's accomplishments. 1 year in, that's coming up when our news returns. A 65-year-old man has been charged with sexually assaulting a 12-year-old girl. Mango Key Andrews resident Calvin Sweeting Sr. appeared before Magistrate Shaker Seville, charged with unlawful sexual intercourse and indecent assault. The charges stem from an alleged incident at the minor's home on July 28, 2022. Sweeting, who is represented by Ian Cargill, did not have to enter pleas to the charges. The matter was adjourned to November 15th for the presentation of a voluntary bill of indictment, which will fast-track the case to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, Sweeting was remanded to the Bahamas Department of Correctional Services. He will remain there unless he is granted bail by a Supreme Court judge. A magistrate has requested a psychiatric evaluation for accused escapee London Ramming before he's arraigned. The report will help Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt determine if the 25-year-old is fit to plead to the escape charge. Prosecutors allege that Ramming walked out of the South Street Magistrate Court complex around 5 p.m. on September 23rd after he'd been sentenced to 15 months imprisonment for violating his bail by cutting off his ankle monitor. He was captured on September 25th 5th at Hampton Street. The magistrate says she wants a recent evaluation after Ryman's lawyer, Bjorn Ferguson, gave the court a psychiatric report dated April 5th. Now Ryman returns to court on November 15th for the escape case. In March, Ryman was charged with 3 counts of attempted murder after he live-streamed himself shooting at a home with 3 people inside after he allegedly opened fire on their home. Condolences continue to pour in over the shocking death of the country's latest murder victim, longtime Cable Bahamas employee Marcus Hinsby. He was found dead 2 days ago in his condo at Veneto in western New Providence. Tonight, he's being remembered by friends from the local theater community in Grand Bahama. Jamila Mizik reports.
Marcus Hinsby was a longtime volunteer at the Regency Theater in Freeport. His friend Olivia Dorset says she and Marcus were technical volunteers at the theater, both serving as sound engineers.
Marcus and I did a number of shows together where we worked together, and shows that he didn't do sound on, he would be the musician in the band playing the drums.
She says he also played drums for her first show, Clue the Musical. Marcus was also involved in other productions like Raisin, Chicago, Ain't Misbehavin', and Dreamgirls. She describes Marcus as one of the nicest people you'd ever meet, adding that it is devastating to know what happened to him.
With a volunteer group like the Regency, he was just always willing to step forward, no matter how late the rehearsals, no matter how many rehearsals. He was just always there, easygoing, happy to help, just a very kind spirit.
Eric Russell also reflecting on Marcus's role in the arts as they two worked together in the theater. He says Marcus was also his former landlord.
He was such a kind man. It's shocking to think of what has happened to him, and it's a real loss to the community in the Bahamas because he was friendly and nice and also generous to everyone that knew him.
The Freeport Players Guild also issuing a statement on Facebook. The statement reads, "It is with heavy hearts that we send our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Marcus Hinsby. He was a kind soul with a helpful spirit, which won him the award for long-standing volunteer service in the sound department." Dorset says the theater will be fully open this Thursday for the first time since Dorian, but for them, instead of a celebration, it will be a much more somber evening. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
More than a week after a symposium for sexual offenses legislation reform was held, Attorney General Ryan Pinder says consultation continues. The AG says the matter has not been placed on the back burner as he insists progress is being made.
I participated in that, presenting the framework of the amendment that we had proposed. It is a consultation session. It continues to be a consultation session widely. We note that there are differing opinions, but I think that the government feels that there is some, positive momentum with respect to having to bring necessary change, and we're just continuing the dialogue.
The nation's chief listing his government's accomplishments since taking office and admits that more work can be done.
All right, Natalia, plus coming up in sports for you tonight, the Miami Heat in town ahead of the 2023 season. Their training camp is underway. We'll also tell you how last night the Panthers claiming their first ever Government League championship. That's all coming up in sports.
And we're still watching Hurricane Ian. Greg is back in the Weather Center with the latest. The details when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. Prime Minister Philip Davis acknowledging the laundry list of what he says are his administration's accomplishments since taking office. But he also says there's still a lot of work to be done. Davis pointing to the sale of the Grand Lucayan Hotel and an RFP for Grand Bahamas Airport as successes.
We were successful
in negotiating the introduction of a new direct flight services to Grand Bahama. Negotiations for the closing on the sale of Grand Lucayan are on track to close in November.
PM Davis also touting making available 47 new affordable homes in the Pinecrest community, adding that more are to come on a few islands. He also promoted the reduction of import duties and monitoring price control.
We have therefore reduced import duties on dozens of food items, including healthy options like fruits and vegetables. We have lifted the import ban on Canadian beef, which will lower the cost of meat to consumers. We have expanded the list of food items on the price control list and have also hired new price control inspectors to ensure compliance with price regulation requirements.
A committee has been formed to address the shantytown issue in Abaco, according to Works and Utilities Minister Alfred Sayers. The announcement comes as the shantytown issue in Abaco remains a major issue after Hurricane Dorian destroyed the mud and pigeon peas in 2019.
I have directed, and I disclose now, that the ministry constitute a committee to look at irregular communities in Abaco, which I saw myself as I drove from the airport, and that is what prompted me to ask the ministry to review it.
Now, this isn't the first time that a committee was formed to address the shantytown issue. Under the Minnis administration, a shantytown action task force was formed. In 2018, the then government announced it would demolish shantytowns, but a court injunction blocked the demolition. The Miami Heat's in town for training camp ahead of the 2023 NBA season. Meanwhile, the Panthers win their first title as the Government League Championships wrap up. Marcellus Hall is up now with a check on sports. Marcellus?
All right, thanks, Natalia. Welcome to our sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. The Miami Heat, their NBA franchise, in town for the next couple of days as they get ready for training camp right here on these shores. Of course, with hurricane forces attacking the Florida coast right now, Bahamas probably the best place they can be, but so far so good as training camp has been rolling along very well. We heard from some of those involved. Let's take a look at how things went down. The Miami Heat basketball team in Nassau going through their training camp ahead of the start of the NBA season, just about a month away. Team members going through their paces after a tough practice. Head coach Eric Spoelstra talking about what they hope to accomplish here at the training camp in the Bahamas. Meanwhile, player Tyler Hero also talking about what they want to do and what his personal goals are heading into the 2023 season.
Very competitive, as you can imagine. You know, we have a lot of guys that have really prepared this offseason and have come into the frame of mind in shape and ready to compete. You know, we have that saying all the time, iron sharpens iron. And
just to continue to get better, continue to improve. And, you know, as a team, we want to win a championship.
Speaking of basketball, the Bahamas Government Departmental Basketball Association Championships continuing last night over at the Candelage Gymnasium. Panthers trying to finish off the Cyborgs after winning Game 3 and then losing Games 4 and 5. Cyborgs trying to force a deciding Game 7. Panthers, though, had enough. Closing moments, Kimsey Silvestri adding a couple of baskets here, and Panthers get the win. 94-84 ends up being the final score. Sylvester leading the way, 32 points. He was the leading scorer in the contest. Abel Joseph, he had 31 in the losing effort. MVP was Roosevelt Wiley. Afterwards, coaching staff proud, including Perry Darling, who projected a win heading into the series.
I told you, Marcellus, that this is our time. Everything happened in God time. That team, they beat us 2 years in a row. We came back, we went up 3-0. And then we went to some adversity, but guess what? We are the champs. We persevered, and as you can see, as a result, we're the champions tonight. All it takes is perseverance.
Here's your look at sports here for you on this Wednesday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Italia.
Don't go away. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is back in the weather center, still tracking the tropics. The latest on Hurricane Ian's track when our news returns. Welcome back to our news. We are still tracking Hurricane Ian as it makes landfall in Florida. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is back in the Weather Center with more on his current track. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. And of course, we are watching two areas actually in the tropics. We'll talk about Ian in a short while, but guess what? Tropical depression number 11 formed earlier today. It's out there in the open Atlantic, a system that we were watching for the last day or two. Not really going to be a problem for anybody at this time, but of course, Ian is our main concern right now. Rain bands still associated with that system affecting the Northwest Bahamas and Andros. Grand Bahama, you're getting in on the action. Ian is now inland, and we got a 7 p.m. update that dropped the winds now down to 125 miles per hour. Was up to 140 miles per hour, but it's going to continue to weaken as it moves across the state of Florida. By Friday, we expect the system to get off the east coast of Florida, and eventually by the weekend, should make a second landfall somewhere around the Georgia, the South Carolina area. But in the meantime, rain bands associated with that, a tropical storm warning still in effect for the Northwest, well, Bimini and Grand Bahama in the Northwest Bahamas, but we expect that system to, as it continues to move towards the north and east, we expect those warnings to likely be dropped by tomorrow or late on Friday. Boating forecast, we're asking you boaters still in the Northwest Bahamas to remain in port. Your winds will be out of the south at 20 to 30 knots, mainly up near Grand Bahama, Abaco, and the Bimini area. Seas 4 to 6 feet, up to 8 feet. Your high tide will be at 10-19 tonight. For the central and southeast Bahamas, caution fly for you guys down there. East to southeast winds at 15 to 20 knots. Seas running 4 to 7 feet over open waters. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look now at your extended forecast. Maybe one more day of showers and isolated thunderstorms expected. We didn't get that to come up, but more showers and thunderstorms in the forecast tomorrow, and we expect those showers to wane by Friday and into the weekend, so we're looking for better conditions by the weekend. That's a look at our weather. Back to you, Italia.
Thanks so much, Greg. And that does it for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Italia Hall. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.